Welcome back, everyone, to Context for Chaos, and this is part 4 of Barbara Moore's 2023 interview. Enjoy.
Yeah, I think you might be right there. That would be a better use for them, perhaps. But yeah, a lot of the spreads feel like they're themes or novelty spreads.
That is the perfect word for them. They are novelty spreads. Yes,
I
exactly.
mean, novelty items are fun and amusing and clever, but they're not always going to be a poet or a plumber. They're going to just be a fun thing that gets tossed aside when you're done with it. A spread should make your job as a reader easier, not harder. When I was a working reader, I only used a handful of on the regular spreads, and then the rest, of course, I would make up to suit the actual question or situation.
Okay, so now let's talk about how to craft or spot a good spread. And what I took from your book was that good spreads use the way our mind naturally interprets lines and movement. And what inspired you to see spreads in this way?
I kind of based my information that I used on the rules of graphic design. My wife is a graphic designer, so I was exposed to that a lot. Artists are trained to do things, in certain ways, have certain hierarchies. And so you want to have like an active motion. You have things start on the left and go up to the right. And if you want to show some kind of dynamic movement in your spread, you might consider doing that. That is something about these novelty spreads. Usually the cards are laid out to mimic the shape of if it's the ice cream sundae spread, then it's supposed to mimic an ice cream sundae in shape, which may have no cogent relationship to the cards and the positions.
Oh, yeah, totally. So, can you give us some examples of different ways we could craft a spread?
Oh my goodness. Yes, there are ways to do that. Yeah. Okay, so we'll start easy. We'll start with the 3 card spreads. Visually, you lay them out in a horizontal row. For Americans, we read from left to right. So past, present, future makes perfect sense. 3 rows horizontal because that is how we read. And so it makes sense to our minds. So now if we're looking at something that's more hierarchical, like a problem, the base, there's a problem at the base of this whole thing. So it's at the bottom. Then how are you going to solve it? Well, the solution goes on top. And then the outcome is on the very top. So you start from the bottom and go up from the problem to the solution. It's a visual hierarchy. Another way to do it, a 3 card spread, you lay the card, the main card, and then you lay a card crossing over it, like in the middle of a Celtic cross. So then you have the situation and then the problem or the crossing energy or whatever. And then you can have a 3rd card that shows the outcome. That helps your brain see there are 2 things that are interacting, and that interaction is going to cause a response. So you have a question and you want the querent in the center. So you have the card representing the querent and their, I don't know, thoughts, feelings, attitudes right there in the middle. And then one of my favorite spreads is a 5 card spread. So the card in the middle and then one on top, bottom, one on either side. And then you just use the information of the situation and the logic of the past, the present, the foundation, the highest goal, and then you can make them more specific to suit the needs. But then you have all the cards in the proper relation to each other because you have the past, present, future 3 card spread in that 5 card cross. And then you have a 3 card going up. So you can read the cards in all these different ways. Plus, you read each card in relation to the center card.
Yeah, and looking at it this way opens the spread up to be used in all sorts of ways. And by crafting a spread with lines and movement in mind, you can simply put the cards in specific formation and you may not even have to label the positions.
I think in general, of course, there are always exceptions. Everybody's different. But yeah, I agree with you. I think the less structure, it has to give just enough structure, but not too much. And you said about painting yourself into a corner. Yeah, you don't want to do that. You want the cards to open up a vista for you, not give you a pinhole. And the other thing too, having very simple or virtually non-existent positions lets you see how the cards interact with each other even more, which is really where the action should all be happening is with the cards.
Yes, exactly. You start by assessing the cards. And then, if you have a supportive spread, you follow the track, and it's much easier to retrace your steps or integrate the messages from each position, which is so much easier than trying to glean an answer from each position alone. And it combats that pitfall of trying to make the cards say what you want them to say. So let's leave the spreads behind really quick and let's go over just simply the patterns themselves. So let's look at the pattern of a vertical line and how our mind interprets that. So if I pull cards in a vertical line, straight up and down, the first thing that comes to my mind is energy that is contained to the present moment. Since there's no cards creating a horizontal line from left to right, I'm not looking into the past or future. And since there's no duality, I'm not talking about anyone else or any outside events. I'm only talking about whoever is receiving the reading. And this would be a good spread to use for someone who was asking me about, say, their internal world, like assessing their chakras.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yep, yep, yep. And in all those things too, the other besides being contained, in time or space, also the idea of hierarchy is usually, but not always, but usually implied when especially if you number the cards from bottom to top, it implies top is more valuable or more pure. I mean, even with the chakras, it's the crown chakra is usually out more elevated than the root chakra, even though they're both important and equal. You know what I mean, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely hierarchy. So something building on top of the previous card toward an outcome or toward a solution or a release of energy, maybe. But you can also use this vertical spread to look at what's within you and what's outside of you, right? Like, let's say we use the 7 card spread that we first used for the chakras, but now we want to use it for this kind of spread. So instead of making the base card position 1, all we have to do is move position 1 to the middle card so that the bottom 3 cards represent the internal world, whereas the top 3 cards represent the external world, right? As above, so below. And if you want to get rid of the 7 card spread or reduce it back down to 3 cards, all vertical, but we leave the middle card as position 1, we can then add 2 more cards on the left and the right of position 1 to build the 5 card spread you mentioned. The very center card being you or the querent as they are right now. The card above the middle card can represent what's on their mind or what they're looking at. Beneath the middle card can be how they truly feel or something hidden from them. And then the 2 cards flanking or on either side of the middle card create the horizontal line we've talked about. That's the past of the situation and the future of the situation as it stands so far. So you start from the middle and move out, and you can see how the other cards are affecting the middle card. And when I say a 5 card spread, everybody, imagine the Celtic cross without a staff and without a crossing card. It's just a
Right,
5 card kind of cross.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm just trying to. I like that idea, because it reminds me of like the tree of life. The card you put down first, but it's in the middle is the middle world, and then you have the underworld and the upper world. So, yeah.
Thank you for joining us, and until next time, as above, so below, blessed be.